On the morning of her 63rd birthday, Ellen Shaw woke to the sound of rain tapping against the bedroom window. For a few moments, she lay still beneath the covers, listening. There had been a time when birthdays began with voices, children running up the stairs, someone burning toast in the kitchen, her husband, David, pretending he had forgotten, then appearing with a badly wrapped parcel and a grin that gave everything away. Now there was only the rain. Ellen reached for her glasses and looked at the clock. 7:12. No reason to get up yet. She turned onto her side and looked at the birthday cards lined along the mantelpiece opposite the bed. 4 in total. 1 from her sister. 1 from the woman next door. 1 from the dentist, which hardly counted. And 1 from a charity she had donated to 3 years ago. She smiled despite herself. At least someone had remembered. By 10 o'clock, Ellen was dressed. The kettle had boiled twice, and the rain had settled into a steady gray drizzle. She was standing at the kitchen window when the doorbell rang. On the doorstep stood a young man in a green waterproof jacket, holding a bouquet so large he had to lean around it to see her. Ellen Shaw? Yes. These are for you. The flowers were beautiful. White roses, pale pink lilies, and sprigs of eucalyptus wrapped in cream paper and tied with a dark green ribbon. Ellen took them carefully. There must be some mistake. The young man checked the label. Number 18, Hawthorne Close? Yes. Then they're definitely yours. Happy birthday. Before she could ask anything else, he hurried back through the rain toward the van. Ellen carried the bouquet into the kitchen and placed it on the table. A small white card was tucked between the roses. She pulled it free and opened it. There were only 4 words. From someone who remembers. Here's the next chunk. Ellen read the message twice, then a third time. The handwriting was neat and unfamiliar, written in blue ink rather than printed by a machine. She turned the card over, but there was nothing on the back. For a moment, she simply stood there with the flowers in her arms, feeling something she had not expected to feel that morning. Curiosity. She found the largest vase she owned, filled it with water, and began trimming the stems. As she worked, names passed through her mind. Her sister, Margaret, would have signed her name. So would the neighbor. Her daughter, Claire, had sent a brief text just after 9. Happy birthday, Mum. Hope you have a nice day. No mention of flowers. There had been friends once, though most had gradually disappeared after David died. Not through cruelty. Life simply moved on, and Ellen had become easier to forget. She placed the flowers in the center of the kitchen table and stepped back. They changed the whole room. The pale colors softened the gray morning. The lilies filled the kitchen with a sweet, clean scent. For the first time that day, Ellen felt as though it truly was her birthday. At lunchtime, she telephoned the florist whose name was printed on the wrapping. Greenwood flowers, a cheerful voice answered. Ellen explained about the bouquet and read out the order number. There was a brief tapping of keys. Yes, I have it here, the woman said. Birthday bouquet for Ellen Shaw. Could you tell me who ordered it? I'm sorry. The sender asked to remain anonymous. But surely you have a name. We do, but I'm not allowed to give it out. Ellen looked across at the flowers. Could you at least pass on a message? The woman hesitated. Yes, I can do that. Ellen picked up the little white card again. Tell them I would like to know what they remember. The woman promised she would. For the rest of the afternoon, Ellen found herself listening for the telephone. It did not ring. By evening, the flowers had opened a little more, filling the kitchen with their scent. Ellen made herself a small supper, watched half of a television program, and went to bed earlier than usual. She told herself the bouquet had probably come from someone who preferred to remain a mystery. Perhaps that was all there was to it. 2 days later, an envelope arrived. There was no stamp and no postmark. It had been pushed through the letterbox by hand. Ellen carried it into the kitchen before opening it. Inside was an old photograph. 2 young women stood outside a small cafe, both wearing white aprons. One was Ellen, no more than 20, her hair tied back and her face turned toward the sun. Beside her stood a dark-haired woman with a wide smile and one arm linked through Ellen's. Ellen stared at the photograph. She knew the woman. Her name was Ruth Bennett. They had worked together at the cafe for less than a year, more than 40 years ago. On the back of the photograph, someone had written, "You said nobody should have to face their birthday alone." And suddenly, Ellen remembered, Ruth had been 21, quiet, nervous, and forever apologizing when she had done nothing wrong. One evening, Ellen had found her crying in the stockroom. It was Ruth's birthday. Her mother had died the year before, and her father had not spoken to her since she left home. No one at work knew what day it was. Ellen had taken her back to the small flat she shared with her sister. They bought a cheap cake from the corner shop, found 2 candles in a kitchen drawer, and invited 3 neighbors upstairs. It had not been much. A few sandwiches, a bottle of lemonade, someone playing records too loudly. But Ruth had laughed that night. Ellen remembered that now. She remembered Ruth standing in the middle of the room with tears in her eyes while everyone sang to her. A few months later, Ruth moved away. They wrote for a while, but the letters became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Ellen turned the photograph over again. "You said nobody should have to face their birthday alone." She sat very still. All those years ago, she had thought she was simply being kind. She had never imagined Ruth would remember it for the rest of her life. At the bottom of the envelope was a folded sheet of paper. Ellen opened it carefully. "Dear Ellen, I hoped you would remember the photograph. I have thought about writing to you many times, but I always convinced myself that the evening meant far more to me than it ever did to you. You gave me a birthday when I believed nobody cared whether I existed. I never forgot that. When I heard that David had died, I wanted to contact you, but too much time had passed and I lost my nerve. Then, a few weeks ago, I saw your name in an old local newspaper online. It mentioned Hawthorne Close, and I realized you still lived there. I remembered what you once said to me. Nobody should have to face their birthday alone." Ellen paused and looked at the flowers on the table. Then she read the final line. "So this year, I wanted to make sure you didn't." Beneath it, Ruth had written a telephone number. Ellen looked at the number for a long time before reaching for the telephone. She entered it slowly, checking each digit twice. The call connected after 3 rings. "Hello?" The voice was older, but Ellen knew it at once. "Ruth?" There was a small gasp at the other end. "Ellen?" For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ruth laughed softly. "You remembered." Ellen looked across at the flowers on the kitchen table. "Yes, she said. I did. Outside, the rain had stopped. A thin line of sunlight fell across the white roses. For the first time in years, Ellen's birthday did not feel like the end of something. It felt like a beginning.